If you haven't already noticed, Techtober is in full swing with quite a few smartphones announced earlier this month, like the Google Pixel 5 and the 4a 5G, and even the iPhone earlier this week. But today, OnePlus finally unveiled the OnePlus 8T, a device that we've been waiting for a very long time. And since this phone is brand new, and the fact that we can finally talk about the performance and the experience offered by the Google Pixel 5, I thought it would be a great time to compare these two smartphones to see what you get for your money when you decide to purchase either of these two smartphones. Now, while most smartphone manufacturers do release their first wave of flagship devices during the first half of the year, typically in March or April, in order to take advantage of those new flagship tier chipsets that Qualcomm releases, a lot of the manufacturers do release a second wave of devices in October in order to compete with the iPhone and also whatever Samsung is typically putting out in the second half of the year. And that's exactly what the OnePlus 8T is. It's typically not a huge upgrade over the OnePlus device that released in the first half of the year, but OnePlus has always been of the mindset of if we have some improvements that we can give to our customers, might as well do it now rather than having them wait a full year in order for them to get that. So with this comparison, we're going to be going through some of the features and some of the performance of these two devices as far as the processors, camera quality, display, and even battery life to give you an idea of which device may be the right fit for you. For the last few years, OnePlus has been trying to differentiate its smartphones from the competition by giving them really good AMOLED displays. And that's no exception this year with the OnePlus 8T. On the front of this device, you get a 5.55-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED panel with a 120 Hz refresh rate, which is really good considering the price point of this phone, which is $750 US. It also has a 240 Hz touch sampling rate so that your touches on the screen are registered twice as fast as what the screen can actually refresh at. Honestly, using this phone feels extremely smooth, no matter what you're doing. If you're scrolling through Twitter, browsing the web, or playing games, that 120 Hz refresh rate makes this thing feel like it's flying all the time. Switching over to the Pixel 5, you do get a quick refresh rate on this smartphone as well, though it is a little bit slower at 90 Hz. Now, we've seen this before on other Pixel devices, and the experience here is really good. But one thing that's going to be a downside for a lot of people when comparing these two devices is the screen size. You have 6 inches versus 6.55. And depending on what size of phone you actually like, that's going to be really one of the main deciding factors here. If you're a small phone kind of person, the Pixel 5 will definitely feel a lot more comfortable. But if you want that extra screen real estate for watching movies, playing games, or just browsing the web, the OnePlus 8T is definitely the way to go. And one last thing that I'd like to point out, both of these phones have flat displays and not curved edges, which I really love. Not having that extra glare at the top or of the bottom of the screen makes it a lot more enjoyable when you're watching things on the display. And it also helps with not having false touches or types on the screen as you're trying to type things out with messages. That's one of the things that annoys me the most out of Samsung's devices, and also one of the reasons why I really love the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. When it comes to the software experience on both of these devices, there's really not a whole lot to complain about. If you're familiar with Google's Pixel devices, you probably already know that they come running stock Android with a handful of customizations on top of that in order to differentiate themselves from other devices that are on the market. But the user interface is really unchanged here. The main selling point of Google's software experience, though, comes down to being able to get software updates on day one. If you're looking to get the latest version of Android and have all the latest security updates, a Pixel device is definitely the way to go. That being said, this phone here is running a custom skin on top of Android 11. Now, that usually hasn't been an issue in the past on OnePlus devices since their software engineers have tried to improve upon stock Android. But the user experience that you get this year on the OnePlus 8T and the new updates that are coming to older OnePlus devices as well looks a lot more like One UI on Samsung phones than it does stock Android on Google's Pixel devices. The main thing that you'll typically see on all of the first-party applications is that the user interface has been tweaked so that all of the touch controls are closer to the bottom of the screen so that you can use it one-handed. Now, this in and of itself isn't bad, but a lot of people who love the aesthetics of what the user interface was before really aren't liking where OnePlus is going this year. When trying to figure out which smartphone to buy, there are a lot of considerations that need to be made, but one of the most important ones that you'll have to make is trying to decide which camera system is the right one for you. And as far as the OnePlus 8T and the Pixel 5 go, these two devices have completely different approaches. I'm going to start things off with the OnePlus 8T and its quad camera setup on the back of the phone. You get a 48 megapixel main sensor, 16 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and 2 megapixel monochrome black and white sensor. Now that last sensor, the monochrome one, is similar to what we saw from Huawei a couple of years back. It allows the phone to capture more light information that's then shared with the main sensors in order to produce brighter and more vibrant images, and even highlight different details within the shadows and improve low light performance as well. OnePlus has also added 4K video capture at up to 60 frames per second for the main two cameras on the back of this device. And then for the front-facing camera, you get a 16 megapixel sensor in the corner there peeking through the display. That one though can only capture 1080p video at 30 FPS. Switching over to the Pixel 5, you get a dual camera setup on the back of this phone, similar to what we saw on last year's Pixel 4, but this time they've swapped out the 2x zoom for a 16 megapixel sensor paired with an ultra-wide camera. And then you have a 12 megapixel sensor for the main sensor. As far as the front-facing camera goes, it's a lowly 8 megapixel sensor that can capture 1080p video at 30 FPS. Now, while the specifications of these two devices may imply that the OnePlus 8T does have the advantage here, I'm going to show you some side-by-side photo comparisons between these two devices, a little bit of a tease of my full camera comparison between the OnePlus 8T and the Pixel 5, just to give you an idea of what to expect out of these devices and show you how they handle themselves in a variety of different lighting conditions. Take a look. I have to say that I am really impressed with both of these devices and how they handle themselves in a variety of different lighting conditions when capturing photos. The OnePlus 8T does an incredible job thanks to that monochrome sensor that's on the back of the phone. And you can really see this when you compare it to the OnePlus 8 that came out earlier this year. That being said, the Pixel 5 does have the advantage when it comes to taking photos in this comparison, with that ultra-wide camera at 16 megapixels and also that 12 megapixel main sensor. Then flipping things around to the front-facing camera, even though that low-resolution 8 megapixel sensor may seem like it might not take really sharp images, as you can see from the results, it really stands out here. It honestly all comes down to Google's computational photography algorithm here, allowing the hardware on its devices, even though it might be inferior to the competition's, to take much better pictures. Now, the one area in which the OnePlus 8T truly dominates Google's Pixel 5 smartphone is in performance. This phone here is running the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset, and while it might not be the 865 Plus like we've seen on the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, it's still incredibly fast and powerful. You can pretty much play any game you want on this device at maximum frame rates and graphical settings. And the fact that this phone also has 12 gigabytes of RAM makes it a multitasker's dream. In my testing so far, I've been able to run about 18 to 20 apps on this simultaneously without any of them dropping out of memory. And a handful of them were games as well, which take up a lot more RAM than a regular app would. As far as the Pixel 5 goes, it's running a Snapdragon 765G, which is still a respectable chipset for a mid-range smartphone. It can still do a whole lot of gaming on this device, but it can't do maximum frame rates and maximum graphical settings at the same time. You're going to have to choose between those on a lot of different games. As far as multitasking goes, it does a decent job here as well with 8 gigabytes of RAM, but it's nowhere close to what you can get out of the OnePlus 8T. So if performance is one of the most important factors for you, the obvious choice is the OnePlus 8T. If battery performance is an important factor for you, choosing between these two smartphones is a little bit complicated to say the least. When it comes to their specs, the OnePlus 8T has the clear win with a 4,500 mAh battery compared to the 4,080 mAh battery inside the Pixel 5. That being said, in our testing so far, performance between those two batteries seems to be about the same because of the difference in the size of the display and the software tweaks and optimizations. This is actually the first time that I can actually recommend a Google Pixel device, at least one of their flagship devices, not a Pixel 4a or a 3a, when it comes to its battery. That being said, there is a flip side here, whereas this phone only has 18-watt charging, which Google is trying to call fast charging when it's really not, and the OnePlus 8T has 65-watt fast charging. This means you can take the battery from 0 to 100% in just 39 minutes. Or if you only have 15 minutes to put it on the charger, it can go from 0 to 50% in those 15 minutes. It's honestly a game changer since you no longer need to be tethered to an outlet for hours on end or need to charge your device overnight. That being said, Google's device does have the advantage in having wireless charging, a feature that's been omitted from the OnePlus 8T. Google's also added reverse wireless charging this year as well if you want to charge your Pixel Buds if they've lost their charge, or even if you have a friend that needs just a little bit of an extra power boost at the end of the day. I'm going to close things out in this comparison with two final items. The first one being IP68 dust and water resistance rating. And if that's important to you, the Pixel 5 is the only of these two smartphones to have the official certification here. That's not to say that the OnePlus 8T is going to immediately die if you get caught in the rain, but if you do want that extra peace of mind, the Pixel 5 is definitely the way to go. And the last item has to do with stereo speakers on these two smartphones. The OnePlus 8T and the Pixel 5 both have them, one on the bottom and one on the front. But as you can see on the Pixel 5, you really can't see that front-facing second stereo speaker, and that's because it's been hidden below the display so that you have symmetrical bezels all the way around the smartphone. If you're looking for better quality, the OnePlus 8T is definitely the way to go here. It's extremely loud and the audio is really, really good, comparable to what we saw on the OnePlus 8 Pro earlier this year. And honestly, this is a bit of a disappointment since stereo speakers on Pixel devices have been a really go-to feature for them for a very long time. So it's really sad to see that they gave that up just to make it look a little bit prettier on the front of the phone. And that's going to do it for my smartphone comparison between the OnePlus 8T and Google's Pixel 5. Now, if I did have to choose one device, my money would be going to the OnePlus 8T at $750. It really offers an incredible experience with the smartphone cameras that it has, software experience, and overall performance. It's truly, truly a great device. That being said, if photography is the #1 priority for you, the Pixel 5 is probably the option I'd recommend for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see my full review of either of these devices and also a full comparison for the cameras between the Pixel 5 and the OnePlus 8T, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon as well. All of those are coming up within the next couple days, so make sure you stay tuned for those. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.